Never approach the ice cream van. Those were the first words of advice I received from the boy I took my seat next to on the first day of school. I was new to this small town, and coming from a pretty big city, I had always assumed that people from smaller towns were a little odd. I didn't know exactly why, but I suppose when you're young, anything foreign seems strange. Thomas Chambers had only emboldened that perspective with his peculiar comment. I simply raised an eyebrow at him and raised my hands as if to say, "Okay," before turning back to the teacher. At 15 years old, I wasn't exactly chasing after ice cream trucks anyway. Even if I was, I imagined I'd be able to handle myself if the driver turned out to be one of those strange old men that creeps on kids. Regardless, for the rest of the period, I didn't think much of the comment. It wasn't until Thomas made it a point to sit next to me at lunch was this matter brought to my attention again. "Hey, bro," he half yelled as he slid into the empty seat next to mine. "Look, I didn't mean to weird you out. I just wasn't sure if anyone had told you yet." I scoffed. "Told me about the ice cream vans? Is that some kind of urban legend or prank or something?" Thomas turned his head with a perplexed look on his face. He seemed to ponder what to say before merely shrugging and picking up his lunch. "I get the feeling you won't believe me. Ah well, that's really too bad. You seem like a cool guy. I'm not the only one that's going to tell you this, but I guess you can believe whatever you want to think. If you want my advice, get inside if you hear his bells. But if you don't, there's not much I can do." With that, he simply walked away to join the rest of his friends. When I got home, my parents gave me the usual, "How was your day?" and I told them about the strange ice cream van story Thomas had tried to sell me on. My dad raised an eyebrow at this peculiar coincidence. "That's funny. Some people at our work also mentioned something about an ice cream van. Must be some kind of weird small-town prank." He laughed to himself, thinking about it, but I wasn't as amused. At that point, I was mostly sick of it. I get that in a small town where everyone knows everyone, maybe it makes sense to have some kind of initiation. Perhaps eventually being in on the joke makes connecting with new people more comfortable. But it just seemed so stupid. When my dad made a joke about having ice cream after dinner, I politely excused myself to my room to find literally anything else to distract me. Weeks went by, and everything was pretty standard. I made some new friends, and even started talking to this really cute girl named Miyuki. Things were trending in a positive direction, and I was really starting to get comfortable in my new surroundings. After the first week, the cherry on top was that I hadn't heard a single thing about an ice cream van. I was out one Saturday afternoon shooting some hoops on a small court around the corner from my house. I distinctly remember seeing a couple talking on a bench nearby. Both girls would occasionally look in my direction and smile before going back to their conversation. After doing some drills, I planned on asking them if there was a corner store nearby that I could get some water at because I had forgotten to bring some. But before I got the chance, I heard a familiar noise in the distance, slowly coming towards our direction. I stopped to ponder exactly what it was, and it only took me a few moments to recall. Still, by the time I had it figured out, the couple was already being ushered into the houses on the other side of the street from the court. Why on earth would they be frightened by the sound of ice cream bells? I thought to myself. My mind instantly flashed back to what Thomas had said to me on my first day, but it still seemed like a ridiculous concept. I don't know if it was because I wanted some kind of proof that this ice cream van thing was bullshit, or morbidly curious about what would happen. but I was resolved to sit and wait for the van to come by. I walked to the sidewalk and stared on the object meandering towards me in the distance. Without warning, I found myself being lifted off my feet and swiftly carried into one of the neighbouring houses. The large man that had carried me threw me into his home and swiftly locked the 3 or 4 latches that he had on the inside of his door. "The hell are you doing out there, kid?" he screamed, throwing his hands up. "Didn't you hear the damn bells?" My heart was pounding from the excitement. At that point, I didn't know if I was being kidnapped or if maybe the townsfolk indeed were afraid of the ice cream van. I looked to the corner of the living room and saw what I assumed to be his wife and kids huddled together. All had looks of abject terror. When I turned back to the man, he was standing with his hands on his hips, looking down at me like I'd flunked all my classes or something. "The bells?" I motioned towards the window. "You mean from the ice cream truck?" "I don't know if this is some prank you all play on the newbies, but I don't understand. Those things are everywhere." The man took a step forward, and his eyes seemed to soften. He looked towards his wife and motioned for her to take the kids upstairs. Then, he placed a giant paw on my shoulder and walked me to the window and its slightly drawn curtains and simply said, "Look." I watched as a rusted grey van slowly made its way down the street. The windows were matte black, and there didn't seem to be any unique markers on it other than a small square with printed letters reading "Ice Cream." It came to a full stop just a couple houses down from us, and waited. Only a few moments later, its music began to blare much louder than before. The sound seemed to emanate from all around us. It was so loud I could see the windows start to rattle, and for a few moments, I was almost sure it sounded a bit like the sound was coming from inside of this stranger's home. The man told me to keep watching. After only seconds of these now headache-inducing bells being blared surely for the entire neighbourhood to hear, a small boy walked out of his home. I could see his mother's arms reaching for him from their door, but she didn't dare step outside. The boy casually walked up to the van's window, and with every step he took towards it, the music got quieter. When he finally arrived at his destination, eager perhaps for a sweet treat that all kids crave, I saw the window roll down, and inside was pure darkness. The kid looked to be conversing with someone inside, but now I suppose it doesn't matter. An inhumanly large arm, likely the length of my whole body, shot out the window. It was smooth and grey, with what looked like multiple smaller arms growing from the forearm. They were snapping at the air, like they were desperate to feel anything other than the abomination they were connected to. In one lightning-quick motion, it grabbed the boy by his neck and pulled him in through the window. The van then sat in its spot for a few minutes before merrily driving away, playing its now demonic-sounding music as if nothing had happened. Once it was out of sight, and we could no longer hear the bells, the man offered to drive me home. I accepted, and we rode back in silence. I could tell he wanted to say something, but I think we both knew there wasn't much to talk about. We both saw what happened, and I could only assume it wasn't the first time seeing it. Talking about it would have only served to rehash the obvious and led to questions I'm sure he didn't have answers to. As soon as I got into my house, my parents pulled me into a tight hug. Apparently, they had also witnessed the horrors of the ice cream van. My mother spent all night calling people about what we saw, including the real estate agent that sold us the house, but he swore he didn't know anything about what was going on. The local sheriff claimed that there wasn't anything they could do, and all her co-workers seemed to not know much other than to stay away. For all intents and purposes, the whole town seemed to be in the dark just as much as we were. All they knew was to stay away. The next day at school, I confronted Thomas after class, cornering him right before lunch, and I was seething. "Thomas, what the hell? The ice cream van fucking steals people?" "So, you saw it," he said, refusing to look me in the eyes. "Glad you took my warning. Some new people don't. They learn the hard way." "And I just would have been one of those people to learn the hard way?" I began to raise my voice. "You could have told me there was something stealing kids. Maybe I would have listened to you better." He laughed at this. "Right, because you would have believed me. Fact is, unless most people see it, they think we're just joking. Figured I'd try to warn somebody properly at least once." I didn't know if the stress I was feeling was coming from the frustrating conversation or fear over the thing that stalks the town I was going to be spending the rest of high school in. I grabbed my hair and took a moment to calm down before returning to the conversation. "So, what is it then? And why can't you guys get rid of it?" He shrugged. "Don't know. I've heard some rumours it just showed up one day. It rides down the streets pretty infrequently. Sometimes it'll be here for a week straight, and sometimes it'll be gone for months. We've tried conventional methods to get rid of it. I heard one kid even managed to set the truck on fire. The thing showed up the next day looking brand new, and the boy that tried was found drowned in a lake. We've learned to just leave it alone." "Okay, but I saw a boy run towards it. If everyone knows to stay away, then why would that kid willingly run up to the van?" "I've had this theory that the younger you are, the more the bells affect you. From what I've heard, it usually takes kids under the age of 12, but it also takes teens. Ultimately, none of it matters though. The only way to stay safe, for sure, is to just stay inside." He looked down at his phone quickly and told me he had to leave, so I let him go on his way. I was left standing alone with my thoughts. That night, I heard the bells strolling down my street, accompanied by the desperate wail of another parent who lost their child to that nightmarish thing. That night, I vowed to do everything I could to get out of that town. I didn't do much in my high school outside of study and go straight home. I couldn't risk any activities that had me too far out of home or someone else's house. The first opportunity I could take to leave, I did. I tried convincing my parents to come with, but they always insisted on staying, and to this day, I don't understand why. I don't know. I still feel like a coward. So many of my years were spent in fear, and it most certainly carried over to my adult life. Sometimes I still faintly hear the bells as I drift off to sleep. It's only recently that I've realised how I've operated has primarily been from a perspective of self-preservation and not one of concern for other people, including my own damn family. Maybe I owe it to them to go back. Maybe this cycle of fear and pain can be broken. Or maybe I end up chopped into a paste and served on a cone. As I said, I don't know. To anyone that moves into a small town and receives the same warning from the locals, don't take it as a joke. They are dead serious when they say, never approach the ice cream van.